everybody, Scott Butler from Edge Specialist Advice Network. Hope you're all well. I'm coming to you from sunny Merida in the Yucatan in Mexico. Walking through a park from where I'm staying, walking down to the gym. So just trying to maintain all my way. It's easy to drink a lot of beer and get unhealthy. So anyway, cool. Look, what I wanted to discuss today was we made a video. I made a video which was an end of year style recap. I think it was back in late November. Kind of send it out with our Christmas thoughts and wishes to all our clients. It's got some predictions in there and discussions about what I thought was going to happen this year and what we saw happening this year and what we saw coming. I wanted to play that for you, not as an I told you so, more as if you watch the signs early on in the piece, then often they become really obvious. And I guess I want to point out that with the things that are happening at the moment, most of us deep down should not be surprised are happening. So look, it goes to 4 minutes. I want you to watch it. I want you to just have a think about it, and then then I'm gonna give my thoughts about what's happened this year so far and what I've got coming up, and it's fairly important. So okay, look, it goes to 4 minutes. Fast forward if you want to, but it was a good. It was my reflections in November 2021 and my thoughts about what was going to happen in 2022. And let's have a quick little think about it. All right, watch this video. Look, as far as financial things are for the year coming, any predictions that anyone wants to make, God knows, because the current environments are all man-made, man-driven events. So there's inflation that's coming through, which is going to do a lot of things for different investment classes. It's a man-made inflationary issue going on at the moment, and the reason is because supply is restricted. Why is supply restricted? Because we've decided that you have to double clean a huge cargo ship with AdBlue, actually, to wipe it all down to make it all nice and COVID friendly. And truck drivers have to hit COVID friendly tests. Some truck drivers don't want to be truck drivers anymore. Nurses don't want to be nurses anymore. Teachers don't want to be teachers anymore. So inflationary is usually driven by a big surge in demand over the amount of goods that exist. That's not what it is. The goods are being held back, causing price increases. They're being held back by government policies all around the world, coordinated government policies. Now, I'm not saying that their goal is to create inflation, and it's not some sort of conspiracy theory, although governments conspire means talk. Governments talk all the time. But I'm sure it's not to create a huge whack of inflation. I'm sure it's the unexpected effects of overly harsh health restrictions all around the world. So, but how are we going to position ourselves for things that go on with inflationary measures that probably, usually they last for a few years at least, and it could be the decade of inflation. When I look at where a lot of the big money's going is back into commodities. So oil production has been restricted again, so that's going to make oil more expensive. Gold and silver will take a decent position in, I think, for some people. The reason is that it's a commodity. It's usually been seen as historic hedge against inflation, but it's also seen as a position or a buffer against a semi-collapse in the financial system. Now, I'm not predicting that. However, some people are. Those people will probably race to gold, and that pushes gold up as well. Food security. Food security will be a theme for this decade. Food security, and so why is that, Scott? Some farming practices are going to be removed. Some pipeline issues are going to still arise. It doesn't mean that food can get around where it needs to get to, but also huge and large corporations are going through and gobbling up farmland in Canada and North America. Think of the Gates Foundation. They are going through and snapping up as many farms as they can. Is that because those guys need more money? No, it's because they want to control food or food shortage, or they think they're going to do something with food. So Food security, one of the themes that we might be looking at next year. The other one will be energy security. And I don't mean by energy security we've got to go out and make sure you get into wind farms or nuclear things. That what I mean is that energy potentially will be rationed because it's evil. Hurts the planet. Therefore you can only have so much per day or you pay a bigger tax. Somewhere there's a theme, and that's kind of what net zero does to everything. Kind of there's a theme there somewhere. We'll discover what it is. I don't know what it is yet, but remember the big overarching issues, which will be ongoing inflation created by man constricting supply, leads into commodities, so hard assets, housing, farmland especially, and energy supply as well. So as long as we've got those things in the back of our mind, we can see all the other little plays come off that. And hopefully we can position ourselves to get through the world and be okay and take advantage of what could potentially be disastrous for some people. But anyway guys, again, thank you for the year that we had. Okay, so apart from my bad haircut, and I was in the office at work in sunny Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia, what can we see that was, I guess, obvious to us back then, but we kind of maybe thought, nah, that won't happen, and then it really has happened this year. A couple of things. The inflation that we're experiencing is absolutely man-made. Man-made by two areas. One is flooding the world with printed money. So during the COVID wars, when the governments locked everyone in their houses, they gave them a drug to subdue them, so there wasn't riots on the streets, and it was called free cash. Now, in an accounting world, that cash does come from somewhere, but even though it comes from nowhere, it still sits on a balance sheet, and it causes all sorts of long-term ramifications. And it's money's a good, just like anything else. So there was an oversupply of money in the system. That was one thing. The second was that the reserve banks in countries, and ours included, so it's the Fed and the RBA, Bank of Japan, whilst they were locking everyone in their houses and closing down industry, doing all sorts of things, funneling money into big drug companies and the pharmaceutical industrial complex, was they said to everyone, hey, we promise to you that we will, these ultra low rates, we've made all this extra money, so there's extra volumes of cash for you to borrow out there. It's eventually it'll work its way to the regular retail banks. We want you to go and borrow it, and on top of that, we've made it super cheap. It's like it's cheapest it's ever been. Fixed rates are the cheapest they're ever going to be. Variable rates are the cheapest they're ever going to be, and we basically promise, rock solid guarantee, that we won't even think about raising rates until 2024. So please go out and borrow. Please go out and spend money in the economy. Please paper over the issues that we are creating by locking everyone in their houses and closing down businesses, destroying industries. Please go and borrow so that the economy keeps going and we don't look like we've just destroyed the whole planet. Please go and borrow money to paper over that and make it kind of solve it for us. Kick the can down the road to where I'm no longer a politician or a bureaucrat. And we promise that we won't raise rates until 2024. How did that work out? It was a blatant lie. It was a blatant lie. Now, do I think this is all a big tricky plan? Probably not. The problem is these people believe what they say sometimes, and that's even worse. That's even worse when they don't realise how incompetent they actually are. They don't actually understand how the world works. But that's the upshot of it all, right? That's how it's happened. And things happen in the economy. All of a sudden, there's so much money around that inflation, once it gets a hold, it actually gets a real decent hold. Inflation's running pretty hard. Now, there's two types of inflation, right? Two types that we've got, and so you need to understand and have a bit of a think and pick apart what type of inflation we have at the moment in the world and in the globe, because it actually matters big time. Your response to the problem of inflation matters a lot, right? So, traditional inflation or inflation that we would think about, or we would have heard about in our textbooks when we were at high school or even university economics textbooks, is that wages are spiraling higher because for whatever reason, like the search for skilled labour or just labour is so competitive that wages are spiraling higher and higher and higher. That's going to hurt company profits, and therefore we need to damp down that inflation. Interesting that inflation is based, the issue of inflation is sometimes based around company profits, or companies just add on the margins, therefore everything is more expensive in the world, and then those employees ask for higher wages anyway, and you get a spiral. It's a spiral that they're actually worried about, right? That's one type of inflation. That's wage pressure inflation. There is nothing like that in the globe. What we actually have, which is the second type of inflation, is supply side inflation. So we stopped supplying goods around the globe from their cheapest point of origin. You know, we stopped allowing ships to bring goods. We stopped allowing people to trade. We stopped allowing truck drivers to drive their goods across borders, across federal borders, state county lines, unless they had a double shot of an experimentary drug. So all of a sudden, you got these two things happening. You got all this money in the system. Everyone was convinced to go and borrow, and just most of it in Australia would have gone into housing, but businesses borrowed. You know, there's a lot of consumer things that people spent money on as well. A lot of upgrades. Well, that money was chasing goods, too few goods. You just couldn't get the goods. You couldn't get a supplier. You know, electronics were hard to get. Vehicles, you had to wait 8 months for a vehicle, upgrade of a vehicle. You couldn't get a ship. Ships had to be triply cleaned with AdBlue because of COVID, the flu, which, it's now been proven COVID doesn't stick to cash, especially. It doesn't stick to this wall, it doesn't stick to pizza boxes, it doesn't stick to footballs. That was all blatant lies to keep the fear going. And those lies eventually get found out. However, policies were made based around those lies, which affected supply, and therefore when you don't have supply, you've got so much money chasing too few goods, you get this rampant inflation, and now the inflation's at a point where they can't handle it because it's gone from the supply issue, and we now have larger inventories of goods. The actual inventory of goods have caught up. What's the next war? The next war there's two going on. The next war, we look back at our predictions from November last year when we said, look, these are going to be the themes next year. Inflation. So what traditionally handles well in inflation? Hard assets, precious metals, real estate. These are the things that can be protected in an inflationary environment. Doesn't always mean they're going to go up in value and race ahead and you're going to be a millionaire in a hugely inflationary environment. You need to protect the value of your assets because your cash at the bank's going backwards at 8% a year. Thanks, truck. 8% a year. So for these years, we're looking at more about in protection of our wealth, right? So hard assets, so real estate, precious metals, commodities. Commodities was a good call. Oil's up probably 30 to 40%, and again, that isn't because there's not enough oil in the world. That is based upon a government policy. That's based upon government policies from 25% of the globe have decided to sanction Russia and not use their oil and gas. But that same 20 to 25% of the globe also won't let their own citizens or their own companies pull out the oil and gas from their own countries. Now the US could be the number one oil supplier in the world, but they've been sold down the river for the green cult. Is energy. So there it is. Now they'd rather bloody go and do a deal with Venezuela than so that they can actually sit at home and say that they're green, or not pulling oil out of their own country and controlling that energy. I mean, interesting, isn't it? If you have an energy war, which is what it is, then the if you don't turn up with your own energy, you're not going to the battlefield armed. Let's say that again, right? If you've got an energy war, then the way to fight an energy war is with your own cheap energy. And if you don't turn up with your own cheap energy, you're going into the war unarmed. So, there's some smart people in the world that understand this. The general public has been sold lies again. However, as investors, we're looking for themes for this year, like we said back in November last year, and we want to see the themes that have actually carried forward. Commodities was definitely one of them. And we've tried to position some of our portfolios of our investors and myself into commodities. So what sort of commodities? Obviously energy, oil and gas, uranium, precious metals, actual holding some silver and gold coins in a box somewhere. So actually having the actual metal, gold miners, metals miners, copper, lithium, cobalt, you know, some rare earths, and there's going to be a fight for some rare earths now as well, so that's the next commodity going on. Now the last one was food security. Food security is, and food shortages are a man-made phenomenon because people have been buying up farmland and doing a thing called reforestation. So a third of the farmland in the world has been designated by some very rich and powerful people to be turned back into forest, and poor people can starve or eat bugs. That's their plan. It's written on a website. So food security is a big deal. Now, is everyone going to go along with that? I don't know. They're going to have a gun to their head, I think, but maybe they won't anyway. Maybe they'll rise up and not go along with it. But the theme of food security in our portfolios is fairly important, but it also should be a theme for us at our own backyard. You know, just growing a few things makes a whole lot of sense. So anyway guys, look, I'm at the gym. I wanted to go back through and have a talk about that, the thematic predictions that we had in November last year, food security, energy security, which both of those lead into commodities, precious metals, gold and silver, and inflation. And what are we trying to do with inflation? Yes, we can make some money, but what's more important first is protecting the wealth, and you're going to, because everything else goes backwards in value, right, with high inflation. So, you know, hard assets, physical real estate, physical precious metals, you know, these are some of the things that should be able to get you through. Having a larger portion of cash so ready to pounce, that does make some sense. We're in a decade of war, which is one of our predictions, and some of our clients know we've been talking about investing in war machines for the last 12 to 18 months. We actually thought China was probably where the US was going to really go and kick someone in the balls. Looks like they're kicking Russia in the balls, so that's who they want to pick on this time. I'd say they're not ready for China. They think they're ready for Russia. So anyway, all those things lead into different investment markets. This year and the next year, it's going to be about protecting a lot of our wealth, a lot of our things. So anyway, guys, look, not a panicky call out, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a bit of an understanding. Think back to where we talked about last year. Didn't make me Nostradamus. It was actually easy to see some of those themes coming on, and so I guess what that tells me is that you and I, all of us, can actually sit down now and think about the themes coming through for 2023 and 2024 and 2025. Not super amazing. There's wars all over the place. COVID wars, food wars, energy wars, currency wars is what we're currently in the middle of. And then it'll be war. I think the US this week is going to sign on to actually a declaration treaty against Russia. So they'll actually officially be at war with Russia, and that means Australia will be as well. So once upon a time we all thought that we were safe in our island was so removed from anywhere, but that's not how wars are fought anymore. What'll happen is, you know, Russia or China, who have a security pact, will just probably turn off our satellites for 4 days, and people will just starve to death because they don't know how to feed themselves, get water from the rain, store water, that sort of thing. That will just be mayhem. Anyway, things to think about. Store some cash in your house, store some gold and silver in your house, store some water in your house, store some dried food in your house, store some petrol. If you've got an electric car, also go out and get a petrol car. So anyway, little things to think about, guys. I'm not scared of the future. I just want to the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. That's what we're trying to look at. So anyway, I've rattled on for enough. That's a long video. I'll talk to you again soon. See ya.